Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Showroom Logic Zip-Driven webinar, What Your OEM Isn't Telling You, Data-Driven Digital Conquest. This is the third webinar in our Zip-Driven series, and my name is Rob Monson. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Showroom Logic. First, some quick housekeeping. You've all been muted, but we'd like to get to your questions, so please funnel them through the chat tool on the webinar portal. We'll try to get to your questions at the end, and for those who don't get them answered, we'll follow up with you directly. Later on, we'll also show you how to download a free digital conquest report for one of your dealership's models, and we encourage everybody to do this. You may think you know which models are taking your market share, but the answers may truly surprise you, so please do that at the end. So now we'd like to introduce Patrick Bennett, our founder and chief product officer. Pat is going to lead today's presentation, so take it away, Pat.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As Rob mentioned, this is the third in our series we've been doing. We're talking about data, and which is really one of my favorite things to talk about. And over the last year, I've been spending a lot of time with different dealer groups and looking at their data, understanding some of the just challenges that are out there. And it's really been interesting to see the different perspectives on how data is being used or how it's not being used. And I also feel OEMs are a really interesting dynamic. You know, your success is their success, and I feel like they don't really give you enough tools and insight to be successful. So that's really one we'll be looking at today. And really today you'll walk away with some strategies that will surprise the OEM, and I'm going to help you see how data can drive that strategy. So if you don't know who we are, Showroom Logic was founded in 2009, and since then we've done some really good things. Last year we won the Customer Satisfaction Champion across all Google partners, which we're really proud of. We also won the Innovator Award from Google, the only automotive partner to win that award. We also run an award for our top performing mobile platform, and we've also been one of the fastest growing companies for a couple years in a row. So it's been a fun ride so far, and we appreciate all of our partners and dealer customers who've helped us get to this point. So one thing I think I put this in almost every slide when I talk, and I just want to reaffirm how important this is to me, that I feel like unless we're using analytics to drive action, it's really not analytics at all. And so my promise to you today is that we'll be looking at data that is actionable. And one thing I love about this industry is the wealth of data we're all sitting on. And I just hope that you can save everyone time in your org and not go down unactionable rabbit holes that really don't lead to any change. We want to focus on the data that can drive strategy and actually make things happen and move the needle. So 2016 is not the year of mobile, if you've heard that. I think it's been the year of mobile for like the last 4 or 5 years. But this is the year of data. This has been the year of data, and data has to be the driver of decision making and marketing. And really, anytime you see data, ask yourself, can I act on this? And if you can't, dig deeper until you can answer that question. Because what I've found is people listen when you have data to back it up, and we know that's true. And we at Showroom Logic believe data is so important. It's actually part of our brand promise. And you may have seen this in some of our blog posts or announcements over the last month. We have a brand promise to our customers that if they don't receive a data-driven recommendation each month, we'll actually give them $250 in paid search spend to help drive them more traffic. So it's at the core of what we do. We want data to be driving decision-making through our entire organization, and especially onto our clients. So let's start by talking about what every OEM wants. As we jump into this topic and discuss digital conquesting, I want to kind of start with this question about what OEMs want. They come in, they give you an efficiency score, as we see here, and they kind of expect that in your market you're able to perform as well as the state averages, and that's kind of what they hold you to. But what we find is they really don't give you more than that. They don't tell you what data there is that can actually be actionable. They don't share with you what make or models are winning or losing in the different categories that you're competing in. They also don't really provide any tactical recommendations on improving your score. And so we really feel like they have a lot of this data, but they're not sharing it in a compelling or effective way. So there really seems to be a wide gap between what your OEM wants and what your needs are. And in a perfect world, you could sell their vehicles in your assigned market area with perfect efficiency, and your cousins, of similar dealerships, they would kind of keep to themselves in their market area. It's like a franchise utopia, but we know that that is not the case. So OEMs, they want to keep fights outside the family, meaning if there's going to be any, taking of sales away, they obviously would like you to do that from a competitor. And they don't really want you to be fighting over sister franchises. We definitely know that has to happen. But there is other ways to drive market share for you and other opportunities to go after. So one, when we think of the OEM market being 70% of new car sales for this dealer, they also have an addressable market, about 30% of their sales. So we know a huge chunk of sales is outside the OEM market. We see this a lot. So even though there is a defined market area, dealerships sell cars outside of that as well. And it's important to understand both of these areas and how effective you are in order to really move the needle. So although we want to keep in mind the OEM market area, the ASA, PMA, DMA, AOI, APR, ton of acronyms, but it's important to understand that, but it's also important to understand where else you've been effective and how you can move the needle there too. So with the right data, it starts helping to inform better decisions. If you remember, I said in the beginning, this is your data. Well, the right data can give you this insight. So you can understand where sales are happening. You can see what the competition is selling in your market and where those purchasers live. See sales opportunities based on data and not just gut, and focus on the models taking share in your market. So it's important to understand that it's a zero-sum game. The number of buyers in a given market doesn't change drastically month to month. If you looked at the SUV buyers in your market month over month, it's not a linear progression. It's not like every month there's 10 more SUV buyers. It's usually actually pretty flat and pretty consistent. But so it's all about how that share or that group of buyers is then split up among dealerships in the market. So that's really the game we're playing is driving more market share, helping you take more of the sales that are already happening and will continue to happen. So if we look at this, idea of efficiency or deficiency, OEMs kind of give these reports and sometimes even give it by model or segment. But it's kind of fuzzy because they don't really help you understand what other models in that segment are selling and how well they're selling. They go off of the state share of sales. They tell you what is expected in your market and measure you against that. So in this case, you see here this Accord in the hybrid or normal or kind of mid-car segment. 27% of sales of that segment are Accord at the state level, so they expect that same percentage to happen at the market level. But what they don't tell you is tell you how well all the other vehicles inside that segment are performing, and if there's any outliers inside your market that you need to be aware of. So we're going to get back to this report and kind of rub off the fog here and see what data is available if you have the right tools. But first, I want to make sure we're all agreeing that today's consumer is not brand loyal. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but it's absolutely the truth, and that's what we're faced with. There's been a lot of recent studies showing this. I'm going to walk through one that Google and Polk did. So even though loyalty might vary by brand, I think overall we can agree that even the top brands when it comes to loyalty are less than 50%. So we know that there's a big opportunity here. So let's look at some data. Again, I promised we'd be looking at data today, not just speaking in anecdotes. So we know that when Google did the study, they worked with Polk, and it was called the Automotive Shopper Path to Purchase. And there were a bunch of people surveyed based on the car they owned before and what they ended up buying. And we see that the vast majority of people actually ended up buying a different vehicle than they owned before. And we kind of break that down a little more. 71% of people switch brands of what they owned before. 12% stayed with the same brand, and 17% were first-time buyers. So those that switch brands and those first-time buyers, they're open to influence and open to the different makes or models that they would be interested in buying. So after 5-6 years on average that they have a vehicle and then come back into the market, the majority of them are switching. So if we try to understand the path they're taking while they're going down the path of looking for vehicles and then actually ending up buying one, by understanding that path, it helps us to then know where we can have a conversation and have a chance at that customer. So one thing I wish I could say is that it's this easy, right? They see a commercial, they find the nearest dealer, they buy a car. But unfortunately, that is not the path, especially with digital marketing today. The path is much more complex. And if you look at the Google's data, they actually looked at a real buyer's path, all the search queries that they typed in prior to buying a vehicle. And you see that they actually considered 8 different brands and 6 specific models. So it's very complex. So a user's kind of starting with one maker model and then ending up with a different one, and all the different things they consider. In this case, Toyota, Chevy, Ford, Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Nissan, Subaru, just when looking at the different brands. So when we look at the research activity that they spend, and this is in their actual searching, their Google queries, we actually see 79% of that activity is brand comparison. So 29% being segment searches, so trucks for sale near me, new minivans for sale, 2016 sedans, those types of searches. They're not brand loyal. They're not looking for a specific brand yet. They have an open mind. They know the type of car they want to buy, but they don't know the exact car they want to buy. Then 50% of the time is actually spent looking at competitors' brand, changing their mind, doing a Honda Accord search today and a Toyota Camry search tomorrow. So we see that happening a lot. The majority of searches happening, they are switching brands and they're open to different types of vehicles. So when we start thinking about digital conquesting, and we now know from the data that they're definitely not brand loyal, but also that they're showing behavior online that shows that backs that up as well. We want to talk about this idea of digital conquesting. So we can agree at this point that data, should lead to action. That data describes the data we're looking at describes a buyer that is very complex yet open-minded. And a buyer open to consideration needs to know about you and what you have to offer. So that's what we want to discuss, this concept of digital conquesting and how to capitalize on these opportunities. So when we run a conquest campaign, or really any campaign for that matter, digitally, there's really 3 things that you have to have or you will fail. And the first being targeting. So what locations, behaviors, demographics are you going to target to ensure you're exposing yourself in the right places? The messaging, if you're going to enter the conversation of someone who's open to consideration, you have to say something that's meaningful. And we'll talk more about all of these. And then budget, if you're not willing to pay to play, you might as well pack your bags and head home and let other dealers conquest you, because all marketing, as we know, costs money. And we need to ensure we put enough money behind it to make it meaningful. So without those things, it's really a shotgun approach. I like showing this slide a lot too, because it really drives home that, with this kind of spray and pray approach, you're definitely going to hit some bullseyes, but look at all the wasted spin. I mean, I think we'd all much rather pull out a sniper rifle and have our marketing ROI look more like this. And the only way you can do this is by excluding as much waste as possible. And we can do that by being smarter with targeting, messaging, and budget. So let's get back to this report I was saying. I said we'd lift kind of the fog off of this and see which other models in a market might bring more opportunity or insight. So when you have the right data, you can actually look at this a little better, where we can see which models are actually outperforming what was expected. So yeah, Honda came in and told us, hey, you're deficient on Honda Accord by 232 units over the last year. Great, thank you. I knew I needed to sell more cars, right? But what they don't tell you is that Ford Fusion, Hyundai Sonata, Volkswagen Passat, those vehicles are actually exceeding expectations in the market. And I guarantee this Honda dealer never thought of Passat as a vehicle in a similar segment that they should consider conquesting or should consider going after, because you're always going to think of the Chevy, the Nissan, the Toyotas of the world. But we can see Toyota Camry in this instance, it's actually deficient as well. So Accord and Camry are doing worse than expected in this market. So again, having the right data actually starts to surface opportunities we may have not considered before. We also know that every single market is different. We take a similar report again for Accord, and we actually see that Accord is actually fairly strong, actually exceeding expectations by some units. We also see that Subaru Outback is doing way better than was expected to them. And again, maybe not a vehicle someone would consider in their conquesting, but in this market, it could absolutely be a good opportunity. Can also see with the right data where those sales are happening. So if we want to dig into a competitive model and see which zip codes are driving the most sales and the proximity of those zip codes to us, it also gives us insight to this. It also shows where they can buy a Jetta, right? So if these people are defecting from buying my Honda and they're going to a Volkswagen dealership, well, how far are they driving? If I know that people are driving 13 miles who live in my backyard to go buy a Volkswagen, why not have them drive a much less distance to come to me and buy a competing model that will give them many of the similar things that they're looking for? So once we are able to identify the targeting, know the zip codes, know the models that are worth going after, it really comes down to having the right message. And I've got to say, this is probably where I see most dealerships not take the right amount of time to create proper messaging. If we can do better in any place, guys, this is it. Jumped ahead there. So when creating the right message, we want to research the competition, right? So if we know that we need to go after Volkswagen in this example I've been using, we need to know what that Volkswagen dealer is doing. We need to know, are they leading with lease? Are they leading with some crazy finance offer? If we're going to enter that conversation, we need to at least have something similar. You also would never go into battle without a plan. So if you're creating these targets and you have a budget and you don't have a good messaging plan and you don't have proper pages on your site to drive that traffic, you don't have proper messaging in your ads, again, it's like throwing money against the wall without a plan. And we definitely don't want that. Also want to understand how you differentiate yourself. If they're considering a different model, what can you say to help them come to you? What's different about you? Why should I do business with you? So here's an example, again, of a Jetta model. This is a Memorial Day sale that was going on a little while back, and we saw that this dealer was leading very heavily with a off MSRP message and also a very aggressive lease. So when we look at, okay, let's take this dealer of just some local Honda dealer and compare what he's going at with just a price, a starting at price. And then we look at Jetta, and this guy has a breakdown off MSRP, 0% APR, a $69 a month lease, which might even be illegal, but hey, it's very aggressive, and that's what the consumer is seeing. But this is where we're trying to say, if you have an Accord that you're trying to get in front of Jetta buyers or Passat buyers, you need to have a message that lines up with what that consumer is seeing. When they're searching Jetta and Accord, they're seeing these offers, they're seeing these things. And you get in front of them with an Accord and just say a price, why is that compelling? Why would I want to all of a sudden start considering you? Give me something to want to consider you. So that's why messaging is so important. So when we're able to do that right and we have the right targeting, we're able to identify which models we're able to target. A great thing about conquesting is it actually broadens your reach. A lot of dealers are asking me, hey, how can I reach more potential buyers in my market? And a lot of times what they're doing is focusing just on their core models, or in other words, waiting for people to show interests or behaviors specific to these models. Oh, now they're an Accord attender, I'm going to market to them. Or, oh, now they're showing Civic behaviors, I want to market to them. But what about being able to target those models that they're also considering during their complex path and getting in front of them as well? When you do that, in this example, if we took the 3 core models and for each one found 3 models to conquest, we're actually increasing reach by 9x. So we're reaching 9x more than we're able to reach by just focusing on core models. Now you can imagine this can start getting quite expensive, and that's why you want to be smart with the targeting, with the models you go after, and with your messaging to ensure that the ROI can still stay there. You don't want to go too nuts with this and start trying to reach every single intender in your market, because that you're going to go through your money really quickly. Now, what I do know, guys, is that you're already spending money doing this, right? So, I mean, I had a lease coming up a few months ago, and I was being conquested like crazy. I got these mailers, like this one. And this is real. I didn't Photoshop this. I just blurred out who the dealer is, basically telling me that, hey, you have a lease coming off. You're probably in the market again. Let me show you some cars that are similar, and let me show you some offers, right? So we're taking the time to buy these expensive pieces, paying for postage, paying for the creative. The messaging here is all really good, but we got to transfer that over digitally where it can actually be cheaper to reach these people. So again, I know you guys are already doing some of this and have budgets for this, and everyone loves conquesting. Now let's find a way to actually get it done digitally. So once we've talked about, having the right tools to create that targeting, and then we are able to do some research to have the right messaging. What networks do you use? Where do you go find these people? Where do you do these digital buys? Well, there's a lot of places, and I actually want to talk about the pros and cons of each one of these, because I don't believe you should put all your eggs in one basket. We want to diversify your funds, and so there's pros and cons to each one of these. So for one, Google AdWords, largest automotive network, period. More traffic of auto intenders going through Google than any other place. And this is really a place that usually makes sense from a volume perspective as far as being able to reach a lot of people. The issue that I have with AdWords when it comes to conquesting is that when you're going after specific model terms, your quality score is going to be less, which means you have to spend more money. So I'm not saying it can't be effective. I'm just saying when you do AdWords, expect to spend 2.5 times on cost per click than you would on your core models. With your core, when someone searches for what you have, you can show Google that you have high relevancy, that your landing page is about it, that you are a Hyundai dealership in this case, and you're going to have a higher quality score. We definitely have some dealers who are creating really good pages that have good content, but still, Google knows what your domain is about, and also there can be trademark restrictions, which limit you to saying the same model in your ad as you're trying to go after, unless you have trademark authority, which you guys all get through your franchise, through your OEMs for your franchise. So you can really miss out on quality score. However, I have seen it work. Again, it just can cost a little more money. Where I would say you can play on AdWords and see a lot of great success is actually segment queries. So when people type in new trucks, when they type in 2016 minivans, those terms are not trademarked. Everyone has a shot of having a relevant ad and a relevant landing page. And if someone is searching new minivans or minivans for sale near me and you got a bunch and you got good pricing on them, absolutely want to get in front of that person and have a shot. So that is a great way on Google to do conquesting. And maybe you haven't thought about segment searches as conquesting, but it absolutely is, because these people are showing the model or showing the type or segment of vehicle they're interested in, but they're still not brand loyal. They haven't made that jump yet, and that is a great time to get in front of them while they're in that consideration phase. Now, Bing is very similar because it's also a quality score driven auction, but I do want to point out a few differences. Bing has more mature buyers than Google. That means more of them are older, more of them have a higher income. What also we see on Bing is less competition, which usually means 20 to 30% lower cost per lead. However, there's a volume problem, right? So Bing doesn't have as much volume as Google, but you absolutely can drive high quality traffic. There's just not as much of it. So it usually does cost less. And it's another great place to do that segment query coverage I was talking about, where any of your segments or body styles, you can show up there and drive a lot of great traffic for a very low cost. You don't have to pay premiums on that because you can have a high quality score on those terms. Let's talk about video. Now, the reason I think video is a great place for conquesting is video ads actually drive a lot of consideration. When Google did a survey about, it was actually part of that same path to purchase, and asking people, how did video play into your buying decision? 43% of them said that it helped them learn more about vehicles they hadn't previously considered than website ads, mobile ads, search ads, or TV ads. So a video ad is a great place to say, hey, you're considering a Jetta? Oh man, you got to look at the Accord. And maybe you haven't understood all the options of Accord or how it stacks up. That's a great volume or a great place to do it is with video. So with YouTube, number one video platform again, by far. I mean, Google has number one video, number one search, but it is a powerhouse as far as reach. You can also do interest targeting. So you can do some in-market shoppers. You could also tag people who, or target people who are interested in specific makes or models. And then you can do retargeting as well for people who come to your site. But I would not expect this to be a high lead driver. When people are doing video and say, hey, why am I not driving leads? It's very similar to TV and other places. It's not a lead driver. It's a place where people consider new things, and it'll influence them when they're making their decision later on, but it's not something they see an ad, click on it, and come convert at a high rate. It is going to happen, but definitely not as high of a rate as search. So that's why I was saying expect high volume, low traffic at a low cost. So it's a great way to improve overall exposure, to line up and be consistent with your video ads as your other mediums of display or search or other things you're running. It's really good to be consistent across these mediums. So it's another place you can do it. Let's talk about Facebook. It's been becoming more popular. A lot of dealers are talking about the ROI they're driving. A lot of dealers are talking about the cost per click, but not measuring post-click. And that is the one thing I do want to say on Facebook from what we see is you will have a lower form lead conversion rate. These are 86% is mobile traffic. A lot of times they might want to call more. We usually see that mobile traffic calls more than it fills out form leads. So you will look at higher calls. Facebook is the king when it comes to demographic targeting. So when it comes into, are they married? Do they own a car? Their income, where they work, it is a fantastic place to do all of that, but you have to do it right. I think a lot of dealers, when I see they're being too lazy on their targeting because it's just easy. The Facebook interface makes it really easy to select an audience that you might get excited with, but it's not granular enough to make sense for ROI. So that's kind of what I say for Facebook. Yes, you can make it work. Just be smart with your targeting and also expect a little lower lead volume than you'd see on search. Now, there's other potential conquest networks out there. Autotradercars.com, they can let you buy like spotlight ads or similar on conquest models. I'm not saying those are great places to go. What I really want to say is if you are considering conquesting on any other network, like the ones listed here, you need to kind of ask these questions and talk with your rep of these places and ensure they have good answers for these before you go running to them. Does it allow zip code targeting? So we talked about the importance of looking at data at the zip code level, especially since your market areas are a combination of zip codes. You want to be able to focus on those. So can you target at the zip code level? Also, does it give model-specific targeting? If you're only able to go after make intenders, that can be very wide. When it comes to conquesting, you really need to get to the model level. Does it allow good post-click tracking, meaning they can add tags anytime a click happens that'll go into your analytics so that you can see any post-click data after people click on those ads? Do they have campaign-specific budgets? This is a crucial one that you can get killed if they don't, where you can say, hey, for this make, model, zip, I want to target, I want to spend $500 this month. A lot of times they're going to put you into this package with one budget that's shared and basically can be cannibalized across any of your campaigns. So make sure you can run a campaign-specific budget. Also, can you do vehicle segment targeting? I talked about the power of that on the search networks. Someone intending around trucks or minivans or sedans, can you target those segments? Because that is a way of conquesting. One I wanted to point out here that we have been happy with and doing more and more with is the AutoWeb network. And that's a place we've found is a great place to do conquesting because it's a relatively new auction and quality score and some other things don't have a huge relevancy right now. And we've been able to drive a lot of traffic that's very targeted at a low rate through this network. So a word of caution though, when you're going about these conquest strategies, and especially looking at adding a conquest strategy to any of these networks, this is what I'd say: do not compare results side by side. And I see this happening too much. I see a spreadsheet that shows YouTube buy, and it shows paid search, and it shows Bing, and it shows Facebook. And one of the columns is leads, and the Google leads looks great, YouTube leads looks low, and people say, hey, YouTube's not working. Think of each network for what it is, and don't try to compare things side by side. Yeah, you can probably compare Google and Bing. They're both search networks. They're both quality score driven. But if you then try to add in Facebook or YouTube or other things and compare them side by side, it becomes very difficult. Really what you want to do is launch a conquest campaign across multiple networks and calculate the impact it's having across everything combined, because that's really how you're reaching the most customers. And oftentimes you're reaching the same customer in a few of these different places. But with all advertising, we need to take a few shots at someone before we expect them to take action. The other thing is, try not to change it up too fast. A lot of people will launch something like this, they'll run it for 2 weeks, say it's not working, and bail. Let's think about the time people are in market. It's 60 to 90 days. More and more it's going towards 60 or 45. So you need to ensure, if you launch something, that you're letting it run through at least what a common buying cycle is. I'd say 60 days at the minimum before you start changing up things too fast. Now, obviously 3 weeks in, you might see one thing performing astronomically better than everything else. Yes, it can make sense to maybe cut something at that point, but do not try to just change up your strategy all the time after a week of trying. The other caution I would say is, don't vary your message by network. If you create a great message, make sure you're showing it across all mediums. Nothing is more confusing than a consumer to see a YouTube ad with one offer and see a paid search ad with another offer. It actually will make them not trust you as much, and also it's not consistent marketing, which is what you want to help them drive to you. I feel like if you do this, you can actually surprise your OEM. The OEMs prefer conquesting the family brawls, as we've talked about. So if next time your OEM comes in and say, hey, you know how you were telling me you're deficient? I was actually able to dig in with some data and find these models in my market that I want to conquest. And you'll actually find some OEMs will actually co-op those efforts. We're finding more and more of the OEMs that would love to co-op some of your conquesting efforts, as long as they're sound. Can also piggyback the efforts in your backyard. So when the OEM is spending all this money on national advertising, you can line up with that and piggyback it, and kind of ride the coattails of what they're already doing. So it is important to align with kind of the OEM needs, but just ensure you make it specific to your market. So let's wrap this up kind of in summary before I get into a live demo that I think you all will find really, really exciting. One, when we think of conquesting, shopping behavior, the patterns they're taking today is ripe for conquesting. We looked at their buyer intent today, or their buyer path today, all the different keywords they're using. They're showing consideration. It is ripe on digital for conquesting. Sales and registration data helps you find those opportunities. I'll dig into some tools to show you how quick that can be. We talked about how important messaging is, and I want to just stress that again, that you need to take time for messaging. And various networks hold different opportunities. So each network that you might be running with has a different way of driving results, and you need to ensure you don't try to put them up against each other, especially if it's not apples to apples. So I want to mention that you guys can actually pull a free conquest report, which will show you efficiency and deficiency in your market at zipdriven.com. Now I'm actually going to jump into a live demo, and then right after that, I'm going to jump to questions. We'll definitely have some time for that. So what I wanted to show here is, make sure I'm, okay, let me make sure I'm showing the right screen here. All right. So what I wanted to show here is, how we took a lot of this data I've been talking about and made it really easy to make these decisions inside of a tool called ZipDriven. And ZipDriven, if you haven't heard of it, it's built on sales and registration data we get from Experian. We load it every month. And we've added additional layers of inventory and maps and other things to make it very easy. So one thing I wanted to show, and probably one of the most powerful features of our tool, is the ability to create custom markets. So we all know that a dealership's market really is not just kind of a radius around them. We have those in default in our tool, so they'll work. But what we ask our dealers to do is load up their market area, or we can load it for them. So I could call this my PMA, and then I could load in my zip codes by bulk, or I can add zip codes one by one by clicking on them on the map, and I can build a market. And what that does is, after I've built the market, it actually allows me to view any of the data under the lens of the market. And you can create as many markets as you want. And so this actually helps you, again, see data specific to the zip codes that actually matter to you. And I actually want to illustrate that in a different way. So a lot of dealers, when I talk to them and I ask this question, where are 50% of your sales happening? In what zip codes? They really have no idea. Or if I was to say, hey, how far out do you think your sales are going? How many miles are people driving to make up 70, 80% of your sales? Again, something that's usually hard to come by. But that is, in truth, a dealership's addressable market. And that's what we want to understand. So in our tool, we can say, I want to build a market for any of my new car sales where I have been selling 50% of all my sales over the last 6 months, or last year, or last quarter. And I can click add. And what's awesome about that is we actually go into your data, look at the zip codes where you've sold, and actually build a market. So you actually see these zip codes. If you take the sum total of all these sales, this is where this dealer has sold 50% of all of his sales. This is where the majority of the action is occurring. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to call this 50% of sales. And I can save this market. And then, as I was talking about, when we go back into any of our reports, and we have over 20 different reports in our tool that you can pull, any of these reports here, when I go back here and I look at 50%, I'm actually looking only in that market. So all this data here, as far as where I'm ranked, how much I sold, all of that, you see it's actually only highlighting in that market that I just created. So it's very powerful. So I'll go back to the default market, which kind of groups things and says 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and so forth. And I want to talk about, we've talked about conquesting. So one of the important things to understand is the brand strength of different brands in your market. So I've been showing this example of a Ford dealer that's in San Antonio. And we want to understand, okay, which makes in the market are performing really strong. And so what we do is look at state level data. We look at the Texas data. This is similar to how your OEM does it. And we look at those share of sales and then expect those same share of sales to occur within this market that we're looking at. So within 0 to 10 miles around this Ford store, we can actually see that Nissan is doing much better than expected. So Mitsubishi is doing way better than expected, 300% better than expected. Toyota is doing 28% better than expected, Nissan. And we actually see that when we look at, let's see, Ford down here, Ford is actually 11%, or 144 units off of what would be expected of them. So we can see which brands are strongest, which ones are weakest. And then we can actually dig into these and see which zip codes those sales are occurring and which dealers are selling them. So we see that this Mission Mitsubishi, whatever he's doing is working in this market because he has 58% of the share. And as we know, Mitsubishi is actually performing 300% better than expected. So let's jump into a model. And this is where we start getting a little more granular. So I want to go into, let's go to Escape, the Ford Escape. So one thing we want to see with Escape, we're talking about conquesting. We want to understand which other vehicles in the SUV segment, which other vehicles are actually doing better than expected. So I want to sell more Escapes. I want to go after SUV or crossover intenders. So we take the crossover segment, we see RAV4, Rogue, Outlander, Journey. We lay all those out, and then we show those sales inside the market. So we can see right away that RAV4, Rogue, and Outlander are really the ones doing better than expected. And I talked about this before, that I guarantee you if I ask this dealership, hey, how is Outlander performing in the market? They'd say, Outlander what? You know, it's a Mitsubishi. What are you talking about? We actually see here, it sold 34 more units in the last 3 months than it was expected to sell. What if this dealership can conquest Outlander and Tinders and steal 10%, right? That's 3 more units they can have. And you think in your head, you know, Ford Escape, Outlander, 10%, that's not a crazy ask, but it's a matter of understanding, again, in what zip codes are those Outlander sales occurring. And we can see those top zip codes here. This is where Outlander is really doing well. So we can target those zip codes. And then we can also say, okay, which dealership is really killing it? And it's this guy, Mission Mitsubishi. So again, we would go to his website. We'd start looking. What is he saying about Outlander? What is he leading with? Is it a lease offer? Is it special financing? I mean, what is this guy doing? And then ensure in our escape marketing, when we're going after Outlander and Tinders, we have a message that lines up with what makes sense in our market. So again, it's a great way to see by model which other competing vehicles, how they're performing, and which ones might be worth targeting. And so if you have the right tools, again, it can make it very easy to surface this data and see and help create that targeting and that messaging strategy that is needed for Conquest. So I kind of want to wrap it up there and leave it to questions. I know we have some questions coming in. First one, just a reminder, you can go to zipdriven.com. You can actually get a free test drive, which will give you a free Conquest report. So you can see in your market which models are exceeding expectations. And we definitely invite you to do that. So Rob, I'm going to kick it back to you to help do some Q&A.
Thanks, Pat. And we did send a link to the free report inside the chat tool, so you can access it there. And please feel free to continue to submit your questions. So we have a couple questions. And Pat, should I not do conquesting until I've maximized my paid search marketing on my core models?
So that's a good question that we definitely hear. You know, when we are talking about conquesting, just like with your conquest mailers and things you guys do, they're not going to perform at the same rate as your core. So we definitely would invite people to maximize search spend on core models, but do it in a very data-driven way. Don't draw like a 100-mile radius around your store and you know, try to drive traffic in such a large radius. So we help our dealers look at data, make sure for those core models we're targeting the zip codes in their actual area where the buyers are, and then with spend after that, we would then drive toward conquesting.
Second question, how can I get buy-in from my owner to test the digital conquest strategy?
So as I mentioned before, anytime data is used, it really helps with buy-in. So if you just went to a meeting and said, hey, you know, I really feel like we should conquest this vehicle, but have no data to back it up, most likely no one's going to listen to you. When I speak with dealer groups and I talk about big strategy and things, I come with a crap ton of data and I show them, hey, in your market, this is what's occurring. And I'm not making this up. This is what the data is saying. And that's when decisions are made. So I would just invite you to ensure when you're creating a strategy or suggesting any type of strategy to your GM or high, you know, up there, that you should have data to back up your claims.
Okay, our third question, from a cost perspective, it sounds like search engines may not be the best place to conquest. Can you again kind of explain why that is?
Yeah, so search engines like Google and Bing, they award based on relevancy. And if someone is searching for a Malibu and you want to show, you're a Honda store and you want to show like a Honda Accord, you can't really be as relevant as if a Chevy dealer who has a Malibu in stock can be. And so Google will actually penalize you by giving you a lower quality score, which means you have to pay more money. So I know dealerships with large budgets and appetites still do it, and it can still be effective. You just would expect to be generating much higher cost per leads than maybe you're okay with. But I would say, again, I want to iterate how important it is to do segment conquesting. So going after those body style terms on Google and Bing, you can actually be awarded in those cases because you can be highly relevant if you have that body style in stock. So there is a place for AdWords and Bing that is cost effective, and that would be around segment terms. But when you start to go outside of segment and focus more on conquested models, it will be more expensive.
Fourth question, how can I figure out how my OEM calculates how many cars I should be selling in my market area?
Yeah, so typically what we've seen is OEMs use a formula where they take state level share. So if you're in the state of Texas, they're going to look at how all Honda dealers perform in Texas, and they're going to assume that you should be able to hold that same percentage of sales inside your market, and that's what a lot of the OEMs are doing today. So you can, your OEM report will show you that. If you have access to Market Master, you might get some level of detail to that. But what you're going to miss is the ability to then see which other models are doing and kind of answer that question why. So a tool like ZipDriven, or looking at, you could go buy sales and registration data directly and then kind of create it in Excel. It'd take a lot of work. But the data is out there to formulate or kind of reverse engineer the same way the OEMs are doing, which is what we built into our platform.
All right, well, great. I think that's it for questions. So Pat, thanks very much for your time today. Again, as a reminder, you can get a free report using the link that I shared in the chat window, giving you access to one make and model on zipdriven.com. Also, zipdriven.com or ZipDriven is very, very, very affordable and can be purchased for your dealership directly from our website for $199 a month. So not only do you get the Conquest reporting that you've seen kind of a demo of here, but you get all the other great market share data. You can really turn your sales and marketing strategy around on a dime with this platform. So we encourage everybody to go to the website and buy today. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to help you out. You can reach us at info@showroomlogic.com, and we'd be happy to put together a digital conquest or digital battle plan that takes market share from your competitors. We'll also be sending out a copy of this webinar, and I'll forward along also a copy of the free report link in case you missed it. And thank you again for joining us, and have a great week.